Well, good morning, dear people. There's no doubt that Jesus, as portrayed in Luke's gospel, lives the life of a prophet. I mean, we've heard it in his teachings that he's offered so far as we've been walking through Luke's gospel. We've heard it in his synagogue in his home, or as the sermon in his own synagogue from a few weeks back. And of course, we'll continue to hear it as we go, in the stories that he tells and the stories that we tell about him, not only through Lent, but in the Easter season and beyond as well. Jesus lives the life of a prophet. He speaks truth to power. He names injustices. He stirs the pot and organizes his community in ways that mock civil authorities and invite unrest and revolt. He lives the life of a prophet. Even Mary, his mother, and Zechariah and Elizabeth, his extended relatives, sing of this world that he brings when he's just an infant, right? The world set upside down for some and right side up for others. As pastor and New Testament scholar Dr. Eric Loretto recently reflected. And of course, the allure of the prophetic life can be a strong force. The energy of such a movement is contagious. The feeling that you're making a difference is compelling, and that sheer feeling of righteousness and power of effecting change is one hell of a drug. Yet as much as we may be tempted to drink of the prophetic life until we are thoroughly inebriated and carry on late into the night, congratulating those who are willing to step into these transformative spaces, as much as we are tempted to lift up prophets as ones whom we admire and seek to emulate when we can, let us not forget that the prophetic life is not an easy life. For when prophets speak their hard truths into our injustices, when they speak their hard truth into our shortcomings, into our neglected areas of life, we rarely respond to that generously. Or when prophets remind us that our carbon fuel consumption is making our planet uninhabitable for our grandchildren, we rarely respond generously. And when prophets remind us that our criminal justice system is as unjust and as racist and as violent as the Jim Crow South, when we hear that, it's hard for us to respond generously. And when prophets remind us even that our free market economy that we celebrate, that won't actually save humanity and deliver us from sin, when we hear a word like that, it's hard to respond generously. We don't exactly celebrate these hard messages and the prophets that bring them. I mean, if we don't outwardly reject the message and the prophet in the first place, we at least try to relegate them to the sidelines so that they might join the many who have been drowned out in ages past. And so it amazes me that the words of the prophet we most closely follow, Prophet Jesus, it amazes me that the words of Prophet Jesus have endured as much as they have. And of course, perhaps they've endured because of texts like this one that we hear in Luke's gospel today, right, in which Jesus is this target of power-hungry Herod, but in the midst of this difficult space, Jesus reveals the heartache and the holy tension of the prophetic life as he laments the way that the world rejects prophets in their work, even in his own experience, in his own town, in his own urban center in Jerusalem. And he offers this compelling, empathetic, sorrowful, love-filled response that reminds us of the depth of the vision of the world that God is forming to be. For Jesus in his prophetic work, right, has rooted himself in that work of the prophets who have come before him, rooted himself in the ancient promises of God, that ancient covenant that we heard of that God makes with Abram and Sarah and the people in the ancient days, that somehow the world will be made right and humanity will blossom and that all people will be blessed and cared for and will have safe places to call home. And so this is the tension Jesus puts forth. The vision of a world God is creating with the reality of the world as it is, which of course creates some dissonance, but it also fosters hope. And it creates space for us to know that God is with us and that God will be faithful to the covenant and that we can rest in that faithful hope, like all those saints who have gone before us who have rested in that hope as well, in that divine promise that God will continue to act in ways that transform our death into life. And so Jesus, our mother hen, in the midst of difficult truths, offers us her downy breast so that we might be sheltered, gathered in, and cared for, so that we might have a shot of continuing to grow into this vision of what God is creating the world to be. And so on the second Sunday in the Lenten season, dear people, in this in-between wilderness space that we inhabit, amidst our wanderings, amidst our injustices, amidst all of our struggles, know that you and all of us are held together by the Jesus whose heart beats close to us for the sake of our lives and for the sake of the life of the whole world. So come and know that love today. As we sing, as we pass this font, as we gather around the table, know that God's love is here. Amen.